to be honest, Thurman could have fought Crawford if he was really as interested as they were saying after the Barrios fight. Easily, right? Me and Bud, we grew up together. That was my same Olympic year. He was at the Olympic trials when I was at the Olympic trials. We know each other. He knows I've been a puncher since I had the long hair ponytail when I was 15, 16, 17 years old.
Keith Thurman says Terence Bud Crawford and his team, they lied on him. He says that Bud didn't really want no smoke because if he really wants to smoke, he could have had it. He says Bud been knowing he been a puncher since the amateurs. You know my body, son. So we gonna talk about exactly what Keith Thurman said that Bud and his team lied about. We also gonna talk about everything else that Thurman had to say about Bud. But before we do that, make sure that you hit my like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subbed to the channel. Let's get it. Man, Keith Thurman, Mr. Don't Duck Me, son. Son, don't duck me, son. Mr. Don't Duck Me, son. He had a lot to say about Bud Crawford, and he kind of calling Bud Crawford's bluff. He ain't really want it. He don't want to fight. What Bernie be saying, what Bernie the boxer be saying about Errol Spence, he don't want to fight. He didn't want to fight. You got Keith Thurman, he calling Bud's bluff now. But we gonna talk about it. Anyway, man, Keith Thurman, he just did an interview and he kept it 100 in the interview. One thing I like about Keith, man, is, yeah, he corny. He say a lot of corny things at times, but one thing that Keith Thurman do, most of the time, most of all the time, he keep it 100. We ain't really never caught Keith Thurman in the lie, except for that one time when he said he didn't know Jerron Business, and then he came back and was like, yeah, I was BSing. I know who the kid is. It is what it is. Other than that, we ain't never caught Keith Thurman in no lie. You know, Keith Thurman, he keep it so real, sometimes he make himself look bad. Just like when he said, look, I'm not ready for Errol Spence. This is a get back year. I'm not fighting EJ. I believe that EJ is the top fighter in the welterweight division, just like myself, and I'm not fighting him this year. Now, come holler at me next year, and we can get it, but this is a get back year. So he kept it real. A lot of people didn't like that he kept it real, but he didn't pussyfoot around and, you know, take people around the block and, you know, make up excuses and pretend like he wanted to fight when he didn't really want to fight. He just kept it 100. So I've always respect Keith Thurman for keeping it 100. Now, as far as Terence Crawford, we can't say the same thing. You know, Bud is a hell of a fighter, but he ain't always kept it 100. And I would run out of time in the day if I named all the lies that we've caught Bud Crawford in. You know what I'm talking about? Keith Thurman and Bud Crawford is a fight that people was talking about. You know, the PBC was talking about this fight at one point in time. The boxing fans wanted to see this fight at one point in time. It was even rumors that the PBC was offering Terence Bud Crawford a multi-fight deal with the PBC, but they wanted him to fight Keith Thurman before they gave him an Errol Spence fight, which made all the sense in the world at the time because, okay, you haven't really done big numbers on pay-per-view at all. You ain't never sold on pay-per-view. You never did good. So what we'll do is we'll put you up against Keith Thurman, put you on pay-per-view, and we'll see how that sells in order to see how much we're willing to pay you in the Errol Spence Mega Showdown. Well, that didn't happen, but it's only one reason that didn't happen. Also, Keith Thurman and Terence Crawford's name was linked back when Bud was with Top Rank. Now, Bud and his team, they came out and said, hey, we want to fight Keith Thurman, and he asked for $10 million. Well, Keith one-time Thurman, he has a whole lot to say about that. He asked for $10 million, and I'm going to play y'all the audio, like I said. But Keith Thurman and Bud Crawford, man, it's a fight that could have already happened. You heard what Keith Thurman said. I played y'all a snippet of the audio. I'm going to play y'all the rest of the audio, and we're going to continue to cook on it. But as far as what Keith Thurman is saying, he's saying, yeah, that fight could have went down. Bud Crawford and his team, they was running around acting like they really wanted to fight. But did they really want to fight? Did they really want to take a chance in fighting Keith Thurman and putting his O on the line? Well, what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna go ahead and play y'all the audio so y'all can hear exactly what Keith Thurman had to say about the whole situation with Terence Bud Crawford, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna give y'all my take and opinion on it.
To be honest, Thurman could have fought Crawford if he was really as interested as they were saying after the Barrios fight. Easily, right? Thurman versus Bud, if that would have happened, there's potential. You put in your undefeated record against a two-time former unified champion who's never been a pushover. And me and Spence, like we don't really know each other. Me and Bud, we grew up together. That was my same Olympic year. He was at the Olympic trials when I was at the Olympic trials. We know each other. He knows I've been a puncher since I had the long hair ponytail when I was 15, 16, 17 years old. Back in those days, they were calling me Samson. They said, "You see that boy with that ponytail? Oh, that boy Samson. He got that strength. That strength. Ugh. I was dropping people back in the day. I've never outpriced myself. Back when they were talking about me and Bud saying, "Oh, Thurman asked for 10 million." I never asked for 10 million. You know what I'm saying? I'm never going to ask. I need to know what you're going to present to me. I don't ask. You present, then we can start negotiating. Then I can ask. But I never just say, "Hey, I'm not going to fight." Who was that fighter recently said he ain't fighting for less than 10 million, 20 million, something like, Keith Thurman's never made those kind of statements. And I never will.
Now there you hear it. Now we all know the story that Keith Thurman, he outpriced himself. He asked for $10 million in the pandemic. He ain't want to fight me. He did that to get out of the fight because he was bluffing. He really didn't want to fight Bud. Bud has come out even recently and said, "Keith Thurman, all them guys over there on the PBC, they ducked me." Keith Thurman outpriced himself. Danny Garcia outpriced himself. None of those guys wanted no smoke with me. Bud Crawford was also saying the same thing about Errol Spence. When he was over there at Top Rank, he was saying that Errol Spence was ducking him. EJ didn't want no smoke with him. So, when you look at this situation, right, it's Terence Bud Crawford's word against Keith Thurman's word. Now, like I said earlier in the video, you got to look at the situation and who has the history of telling lies, who has the history of keeping it real and being truthful. Well, that's very easy to determine. Keith Thurman has the history of keeping it 100 and telling the truth. Terence Bud Crawford has the history of lying over and over and over again. Now, right now, we're not talking about who is the better fighter and who I believe will win the fight. Because if you ask me that, I think Terence Bud Crawford at this stage in his career is better than Keith Thurman. I think that Bud will beat Keith Thurman. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about during that time period, at that point in time, who's telling the truth. And if you go back and you look at the situation, you can see that Terence Bud Crawford is probably the one that's telling the lie. I mean, like I said, when he was over at Top Rank, he lied and said that Errol Spence ducked him also. And then when he became a free agent, we found out who was really ducking who at the point in time. Then he came back recently and said that he never said that Errol Spence was ducking him. So the man has a history of telling lies. Keith Thurman doesn't have a history of telling lies. Terence Bud Crawford does. What does Keith Thurman look like demanding $10 million in the pandemic? He's always said that was a lie. He didn't say that. You got to hear him say it again. That's a lie. I never asked for no $10 million. You guys have to present me with an offer, and then I would have to go from there. Now, let's look at the situation. The situation, once again, was when Bud Crawford was with Top Rank and Bob Arum. And so Keith Thurman is saying they didn't even send me an offer. All that $10 million shit is a flat out lie. Also, you heard Keith Thurman say, "Look, man, if he wanted to fight, he could have had to fight. But he knows exactly who I am. He know I've been a puncher since the amateurs. He grew up with me. He's seen what I've done in the ring, cracking niggas and knocking them out." So with that being said, Bud didn't want to take a chance at that point in time of putting his O on the line when he had an Errol Spence fight somewhere down the line in the future. He ain't want to take no chance. Now, is Keith Thurman telling the truth? Well, let's look back at the situation. Like I said before, they tried to offer Terence Bud Crawford a multi-fight deal with the PBC, and first up would have been Keith Thurman. A big fight on pay-per-view with Keith Thurman, but Bud turned that down. He turned that down and said, nope, the only one I want is Errol Spence. That's all I want. Well, they offered him Errol Spence again and again, and he didn't take it. So he tried to act like he didn't want no tune-up. He didn't want no fight in between. But what did Bud Crawford do? He eventually got a fight in between. But he went and fought David I've been sneezing. So that lets you know that it wasn't that he didn't want to fight in between. He just didn't want a tough fight in between. Just like Keith Thurman says, he didn't want to put his O on the line against me. Looking at what he had ahead. He wanted a fight in between, but he just didn't want a fight of the caliber of Keith Thurman. Now, like I said, I don't believe that Keith Thurman can beat Terence Bud Crawford. But does he got a chance? Can he crack? Yeah, he do got a chance. You know what I'm saying? Bud ain't got the best of chins. So is it impossible for Keith Thurman to catch Bud Crawford and put him to sleep? Nah, that ain't impossible. And I think that would have been a hell of a fight, depending on what type of shape that Keith Thurman came in, and depending on if Keith Thurman could take a body shot from Bud Crawford, because we all know that that's Keith Thurman's weakness. He can't take body shots. But other than that, man, Keith Thurman can fight. He can box, he can move, he can do all of that. So, I mean, it's obvious who is telling the truth, and it's obvious who is telling the lie. You got to go in the favor of the man that always keep it 100 most of the time and has a history of telling the truth, over a man that constantly contradicts himself and you've caught him in lie after lie after lie. Y'all jump in the comments. Let me hear how y'all feel about this situation. Who do y'all believe? Do y'all believe that Bud Crawford really wanted it and Keith Thurman ducked and asked for $10 million? Or do y'all think that Terence Bud Crawford is lying again? Make sure that y'all hit my like button, drop the comment in the comment section, and sub to the channel if you're not already a subscriber to the channel. And y'all already know how I do. There you go, talking that boxing again, and I'm gone.
Dipping in the catalog, just got it fitted on some shit I need a ladder for.